All right. Hello. Welcome back to the Revenue Growth Architects podcast. Both Chrissy and I are freshly back from England, feeling a bit jet lagged. So hopefully we can muscle our way through this one and keep this entertaining and interesting, and hopefully everyone can learn something. But we do have a pretty cool agenda, actually. So I'll take you through a few of the things we're going to talk about, and then we'll just dive right into it. So we're going to dig into one of the pains that have existed since probably is from the beginning of everyone's career in marketing operations, and that's UTMs. It feels like something that should be one of the basics that everyone's nailed by now, but it's a lot more complicated than people think and actually pretty hard to execute. And we often have to fix a lot when we start working with our clients. So we're going to dig into a lot of the mistakes that we see and the ways to fix them. The second thing we're going to dig into is we've now done 15 custom object deployments in Salesforce for Lifecycle funnel tracking over the past year. So to recognize this milestone, we're going to dig into the learnings that we have found from all of those deployments, and there's some pretty interesting ones in there. And then the last one is we're going to explain why you really need to be digging into what your C-suite really cares about, what their goals are, really what the needs are, before just adopting what they think you should do. The C-suite will often come to you and say, do this, but really, is that the right thing to do? And we'll dig into that one a little bit more. So without further ado, let's get into it. So Xander, I know this is a hot topic for you. You recorded a video on YouTube, so shout out to that. I think it's one of our most popular videos actually on UTMs and how to track better. So explain, what are some of the big mistakes that you're seeing these days?
Yeah, absolutely. I have about 4 that I want to walk through that I am kind of seeing more and more on client calls or working through some of these projects. So first things first, like UTMs are so critical because it's going to help you figure out your lead sourcing from a first touch, last touch, multi-touch perspective. We use it all the time for all of those custom object deployments because we actually have the lifecycle source that is being generated, right? So it's something that we need to make sure that we're getting right when we're working with all of our clients. And some things that, like, the crux of it is UTMs are used to indicate how someone got to you. What did they do to get to your website when we're thinking about it from a digital perspective? Now, we also use it for offline engagements, which sometimes gets complicated for certain people because they're like, UTMs are digital. I don't know why I'm doing this in a list upload. We use it to normalize and get our lead source data. And then we also use it to stamp onto campaign members. So that way you can build out reporting and always use the same fields, even if it's offline. But something that I was noticing for a few engagements is that people were actually using it to indicate what somebody converted on. So they would be like, fills out any form, UTM campaign equals blah, 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 request a demo, white paper 1. And I had to explain to them that, like, that's not a great approach to do because UTM campaign is saying, what was the campaign that drove them to the website? And maybe you drove them to go to the demo page, but they could have clicked around on the website and actually converted on a webinar registration. So if you're using that in your downstream automation to say, what did they convert on, it's going to be inaccurate. And we uncovered quite a few workflows in Marketo that were set up that way that now we're kind of reconfiguring to do it appropriately. It's still useful information. So I always still recommend, like, having some sort of indicator of what was your call to action in your UTMs, but it doesn't mean that that's what they actually actioned on. I think
Why, on that one, why do you
yeah,
think people do that? Like, where are they getting this advice from? Or do you think it's just kind of, they think they see UTM campaign and they think, oh, that's what I should be doing, and they're just guessing? Where's it coming from, do you think?
I think that there's kind of a common practice to just setting UTM campaign as a Salesforce campaign name. And so they kind of equate the two, like, well, I have a demo request Salesforce campaign. I'm driving them to the demo request. So I'll set UTM campaign as the demo request. And I mean, that's fine. It can work that way. I would venture to say that that might actually be like a UTM content. You're driving them to the demo request page to show you what your CTA is. But yeah, I think that, we always feel that pain when we're working with clients, especially when they're not the MOPS person or the operator, where they're going, I have Salesforce campaigns, I have Marketo programs, I have UTM campaign, I have lead source campaign. Like there's a lot of intermixing of the terms. So I think that it's just something where usually, well, I was told to do this at my last job, so I did it at my last job, and then I took it to the next job, and I took it to the next job, as opposed to really thinking about like, why am I setting these parameters?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So what's another one that you're seeing recently?
So it's along the same lines of UTM campaign, and that is not using that consistently, right? So I just gave that example of demo request. Demo request isn't a very useful UTM campaign parameter. Like you want to use UTM campaign to help you track your integrated campaigns effectively. So think of UTM campaign more as what is the theme that I'm driving. And if you're not doing integrated campaigns, maybe that's a great opportunity for your organization. I know we're talking about that right now of like, what does good marketing look like? Good marketing has brand and it has integrated campaigns that is telling a thorough story, right? And so I was recently working with a client that fortunately has been using integrated campaigns and was asking me, okay, in this new world of reporting that we're building for them, how can I make sure that I can actually tie everything to my integrated campaigns? And that's where I recommended to them being able to use UTM campaign. So like you have a campaign name builder, you can use that campaign name builder or a variation of it to give you UTM campaign names. So don't just think of it like it's the demo request one. Think of it as it's my Q3 integrated campaign one variation of that. So that way you can really get some good dynamic data from that.
One thing to note on that too, because I think UTM campaign is like heavily used in ads, and a lot of the time they will have the name of the ad campaign be populated in that field. So if you are going the approach where you want to see more consistency around like the actual integrated campaign and value, especially if you're working with an agency, you want to be very prescriptive around the value that they are using. If there's pushback there, then you might need to figure out, okay, well, what do we need an additional UTM for them or something like that? So they want to see that actual like ad campaign name in the same format that they're putting it in to Google. So just like a note on that, because I think a lot of the times those agencies, they just give them an offer and they're like, okay, now go do it, go run it. And so they're not actually controlling what UTMs are actually being used. The agency's just putting in whatever they feel like.
Yeah, 100%. And not one of the points that I was thinking about ahead of time, but you're not limited to 5 UTM parameters. You could have UTM underscore AdWords or UTM underscore ad campaign or whatever it is that you want to use. So don't feel like you're limited to 5. Just make sure that you're also building your infrastructure to support more if you are creating any of these custom parameters. Speaking of paid media, like oftentimes you run into these scenarios where like the only person on the marketing team that's using UTMs is the paid media person. Everybody in the organization should be using UTMs, right? Quite frankly, if you're creating cadences for a sales engagement platform and you're doing some sort of integrated campaign, like you can UTM those as well. You have to work with the team. Maybe they don't want their plain text emails having UTMs, so you kind of have to find the middle ground. But don't just think of it as it's a paid media approach. It's like you need UTMs on your PR statements, on the, anything that you have linked out. If you have content syndication content that you might want to have UTM parameters that are driving them to the website, like you could use UTMs there. You're trying to indicate how did they get to our website, so that way you can continue to refine and optimize those channels and optimize those messages. So it provides a lot of really great detail.
How have you found or any tips that you have on enabling the team to make sure that was always using UTMs, both for online and offline, making sure you're kind of plugging all the gaps and making sure that everyone is well enabled?
Yeah. So a few different areas. Something that we build out for clients that we work with, and I think that we have it on our website as well, is a UTM builder. And it's not just a one-time use UTM builder. Like, you could go out to a website and use a UTM builder. It's not like there's anything fancy there. But what we what we like about ours is that every row gives you a new UTM. So you can actually see, you could go out on a monthly basis and say, who's been creating UTMs? If you notice that there's somebody who has channels that you think should have UTMs and there's none posted, that might be an opportunity to engage with that person. Also, start to look at your data that you have coming in, because if you see the majority of your web traffic's coming in from web direct, that may be the case. But I would say that it's more likely that they're coming in from other channels and they're not being captured with UTMs. And so it's falsifying your web direct traffic.
Okay. I've got one other question for you, but see if any other
I got one more bullet that I think is really important. And this is one that like we do with clients. We have some requirements that we work with clients, but I noticed that a lot of clients don't just have it before we get engaged with them. And we have a YouTube video does outline like how you can get this set up, but that is actually accounting for your organic channels through UTMs. So what we mean by that is we work with our clients to actually create a custom script on the website. Oftentimes, I will see where, like, if you have UTMs, I'll store those UTMs in cookies and then they get passed through, and that's great. But they're not necessarily thinking about all of the traffic that could be coming to the website that's not UTM'd. And so what we recommend doing is not just capturing if there's UTMs, but if there's not UTMs, look at the referring URL. Where did the traffic come from? If it came from Google, Yahoo, Bing, DuckDuckGo, we know that it's coming in from a search engine. If it's coming in from YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, but there's no UTMs, we know that we can attribute that to some organic social. And so think about it from like a layer, one layer below, and all of a sudden you really start to capture a lot better traffic instead of just reporting on all of those organic things as saying web direct.
That was going to be my question, actually. Yeah,
Sweet.
The take on the cooking side. Yeah. So, anything else to add there, Chrissy or Xander, or on that topic?
I think that the main thing with UTMs is just like just making sure that there's consistency and you have like rigor and diligence around it, and just thinking about all the people who have their hands in the pot of creating things that have UTMs tied to it, down from like your emails all the way out, like I said, to paid ads. You can even add UTMs for sales if they're doing like sales outbound and things like that. So yeah, just kind of getting into that and having that UTM builder, I think is really great, but also just being very mindful of like your overall like diligence into it, and making sure you're accounting for all of the different channels that you're promoting. Like Xander said, it'll just open your eyes more into what actually is working instead of giving a lot of that credit to direct. So
perfect. Yeah, and if you want to go real deep on this, go check out Xander's video on our YouTube channel where he dives into UTMs. And I think, Xander, in that video, you show the flow chart that we have that explains what you just talked about around the cookie tracking, making sure that you're accounting for URLs that have UTMs, but then also making sure you're accounting for when someone comes in with a URL that does not have a UTM, but you can tell where they came from based on the referring information. So really good video, check it out. And I think based on this conversation and that video, you'll be able to solve 99% of your UTM problems. So
love it.
All right, next topic. So I can kick this one off. So we hit a milestone that we're all pretty proud on, and that is about a year and a bit ago, kind of summerish of last year. Alice and our team built a custom object, unmanaged Salesforce package that helps our clients build and get the data that they need for their funnel and their lifecycle, and all the benefits that if you look at some of our other videos on YouTube or some of our other podcasts, you can hear about all the benefits of the custom object tracking. I'm not going to go into that today, but it's been really successful, right? We're not a massive agency. We have 16 people on our team, and so we can't handle a dozen of these deployments a month. But in the last year-ish, we've been able to get through 15 deployments, and our clients are really getting a lot of benefit out of the custom object approach, and it's working really well. But along the way, we've learned a lot of really interesting stuff and really about how to actually implement this and get it working in really complex B2B SaaS environments. And a lot of our clients are, scale up type B2B SaaS companies that have a lot going on. We're not just implementing it into a brand new Salesforce. So I want to talk about, I think we'll maybe try and get through 2 or 3 of these, and also curious, Sander and Chrissy, if you want to share any learnings that you have or kind of jump or piggyback on some of these ones. So the first one I want to dig into is it is not just implementing a custom object in Salesforce. I know I just explained it like that, but it is a much bigger initiative.
Yeah.
And we learned this the hard way, quite frankly. So when we built the package, we got very excited. We started talking to our clients about it. We're like, we need to implement this. So we would go ahead and try and implement it. But during the implementation, we realized, wait a second, their foundation, and if you actually go and have a look at our go-to-market ops framework, you can see it on cs2marketing.com, or we've got like other videos about it. If you look at the foundation, it's everything from, data capture to standardization to enrichment to handoff to signal capture, to your sales ready model, to your sales process. All of that stuff needs to really be buttoned up before you even think about implementing a custom object. And the reason is, custom object, it's just a reporting layer. One of the analogies I like to say is, like, imagine you've got a house and you have electricity running through your house, and you have all of the systems to be able to pass electricity through, light bulbs, washing machines, all of this stuff. And then you have an electric meter on the side of the house that is just counting and calculating how much electricity is running through your house. The custom object is like the electric meter on the side of the house, calculating how much electricity is running through your house. But you need the whole electrical system in your house to be working for that, even to be able to count it, to even be worthwhile, or be able to count it the right way. When we walk into some of these orgs, they've got their house with like an electric system. They've got a power generator powering like some other thing over there. They've got weird, issues with dead ends in their electrical system. I'm not an electrician, so I'm probably butchering like some of the issues here, but and their washing machines like short circuiting. They've got all these issues, right? And then you try and put a power, like you calculate how much electricity is running through the house. And you're like, okay, well, I'm getting like some information, but it's really not accurate here. So it's the same.
Or you're just getting information on just like bad process. So like if you haven't nailed down how sales ready leads are getting to sales, or even like refining that or anything like that, like what's the point of like measuring that, because you're going to just get bad data anyway. So I think
or missing data.
Or missing data. Yeah. And so it's just like, just start tracking properly once you have the foundation. And the foundation stuff is really what's going to drive your business and make them more effective. Like the reporting is just the cherry on top to get the insight into it all. And so when you think about a salesperson or SDR, they don't give a shit about like the reporting that you have. They're like, I just want to be able to follow up with the right people at the right time and have that process be simple and accurate and so forth. And so, and that's what's going to turn into revenue. And that's what you're trying to report on. It's revenue and tracking all those people down to revenue. So it just makes sense, doesn't it?
And this is going to be relevant to the final topic we're going to talk about. But what often happens in these orgs is the C-suite, they want reporting. It's like the number one ask from C-suite is around reporting. And the custom object can give them that. So they say, give me custom object reporting. Well, I mean, they don't even say, give me custom object reporting. They say, give me the reporting. And the best solution would be the custom object. But what they don't realize is there's this underlying foundation that is going to, one, help them enable, the sales team, the marketing team to run all their go-to-market motions, capture data, process data the right way, sell the right way, close revenue. They need that all working just to be able to run the business. Plus, you need that all working to be able to get meaningful reporting on it, kind of like back to my electrical house analogy. And that's,
or they think they have the foundation, which is like,
or they think they have the foundation.
Yeah. And then you go in, you're like, actually, you kind of do, but it's not set up in the right way that we can then report on effectively and so forth.
Yeah. And so there's a few key areas that I think everyone, if you are thinking about the custom object, focus on these areas. Number one, your sales process. I would say 99% of the companies we work with, when we go and audit the sales process, or even just like speak to 3 different people in the company about like what is your sales process. And this is from down to what leads are coming to you, how should sales work them, maybe using a sales engagement tool, etc. When should you create an opportunity, and how you should be able to update that opportunity, and kind of all of the nuances in between all those stages. You ask 3 people in the org, you get 3 different answers. You look at the documentation, there's like 3 versions of the documentation, they're all conflicting. You actually go and look at what's happening, there's opportunities without contact roles, there's sales, there's loads of leads just sat in a working stage, all of these like really common issues. And it's something that this kind of stuff should have been eradicated by now, but it's just hasn't. Companies haven't taken this seriously enough to be able to like really invest in this until maybe they start working with a company like ours to like come and actually build out a repeatable system that's going to work. So that's number 1, like really focus on that. And number 2 is relates a little bit to what Xander was talking about. Your data capture, and then also on top of that, your data process needs to be working. So you need to know, like, there's a being able to see, okay, like how many MQLs did we get and how many converted into pipeline opportunities and revenue. That's great. But the next question is, okay, where did these come from? Where's the attribution here? So you need to be able to make sure your UTMs are tracking properly, you're standardizing that data, you have the right order of operations in place, the data's flowing through from Marketo or HubSpot into Salesforce the right way. So then you can tie that all together so you can show, okay, our demo request conversion rate is 40%. Our content syndication conversion rate is 1%. We're getting all of these meetings from this channel or this campaign. That is where you need both the sales process working and all of the data collection, UTM, lead sourcing process working to be able to give you that picture once you do install a custom object. So do not minimize the foundation is the major takeaway here. Anything to add on that, Chrissy or Xander? No. All right. We can move on to the second one.
Perfectly. I mean, it's
that might be the first time I've opened the door to Xander to give an opinion, and then there wasn't anything there.
I know. I do have opinions. I was just trying to give space for Chrissy. I think that it's also trying to explain that like the end result being the reports, that's what we can always work toward, so like you want to set the expectation with your teams, like we're going to get that for you. But yeah, if you just jump into the deep end, I've seen it. And then you start making bad decisions off of poor data, and that's way more detrimental than waiting 3 months to get the foundation fixed and investing the right number of hours and the right teams to get all of that fixed. Right. And sometimes it's going to take longer depending on how much tech debt has been created. But I think that the other thing that I've just noticed working on a few of these lately is like, keep the process as simple as possible. So when you're going through this, like don't just think about what should I add, but like what should I remove? Are there steps that are just getting in the way? Can we explain this easier? Can we clean up layouts better so that way the team knows what's necessary? I know recently, Chrissy, you had kind of mentioned that in an internal chat of just like, let's just keep it as simple as possible. We can always make it more complex, but when you're trying to like rebuild something, make it smooth. I had a sandbox review yesterday with a client, and that was the feedback that we heard. This is beautiful. I love to see this. This is easy to follow. I'm going to be able to enable this. And then we found, there's going to be like one part of the process that's going to be harder to enable. Well, we can spend more time on that one piece as opposed to here's this giant change for everybody. So I'm always excited about it. Every time that we launch one of these, we get really great feedback because we're taking the time to do it right.
Yeah. That's a good point too, because I think going back to the foundation part, I think a lot of people have been in orgs where they haven't even revisited it for a really long time, honestly. And then they often don't, where that's like the great part about our good market ops framework is we have it pretty nailed down of like, what are the important things that we need to focus on? And so being able to go through and like just focus on those key areas and also make it iterative, like you said, like start out simple. And then once you've gotten to a certain point where everything is, sophisticated enough and scalable, but you can add on, or you can go back and make changes or update it, as our tech and our process or even your org changes. So I think taking this time to start to maybe go back and simplify and take out a lot of what's already there and the foundation that hasn't been touched, I think is just opportunistic, like you said. So
yeah, and people always ask me on sales calls, they're like, when should we start investing in our go-to-market ops or like a custom object like this? And my answer is always like way earlier than you think.
yeah.
Because the cycle that I see over and over and over again, and it makes me want to bang my head against a wall, is that a company scales, they get maybe a couple of rounds of funding, they basically build a massive Frankenstack of stuff that doesn't work when it comes to their go-to-market ops, because there's, they've had like 15 MOPS people, working there in the last 2 years, and everyone's just kind of bolted different parts on, and nothing's working. But then they hire leadership, they hire a CMO, and they go, okay, CMO, in your first 30 days, I want you to have figured out everything, like what's working, what's not working. I want to be able you to allocate the budget perfectly. You need to be able to get 4 to 5 to 6x pipeline. And then it's like the CMO is like, okay, let me have a look at the data. Then I'm sure you've got some great reports for me to look at to see how everything's working. And everyone's like, oh no, we don't actually. Yeah, we actually have nothing for you. And then the CMO goes, oh shit, we need to get someone to come in really quickly. And they call up CS2 and go, how quickly can you get all this stuff working? And then we go, we'll try and do it as quickly as possible, but it's going to take a bit of time because we have to unravel like 3 years of mess before we can start building like a few months of quality stuff. And they're always like, oh, how do you do it quicker? And then we can try and do it quicker. But the problem is, once you go back into the cycle of like trying to rush through things, you're just going to make the same mistakes that the company had made before. Mm-hmm. So if you are a CEO or someone in a leadership position and you're thinking about hiring a CMO, or you've got to the stage where you're going to start getting leadership and you're starting to answer these complex questions, get some of the stuff built before, or at least worked on before, particularly the foundation. You don't have to have a custom object in the early days, but get the foundation working properly, because when you need the reporting, you don't want to have to start building it then, right?
Yeah.
You want to have it ready. So that's a big takeaway there for sure.
Yeah. I think another thing to note here too is just like the misconceptions around like the need for a custom object is like a big learning too, and how there's a good amount of education that needs to be done. Like some companies have been basing their reporting and goals off of the wrong thing. Like they're not doing cohorted analysis. They're taking like an MQL report during a certain time frame, then looking at how many opportunities they got in that time frame, and then trying to deduce like what their conversion rate is. And it's like, wow, that is so inaccurate. Like those opportunities did not come from all those MQLs in that time frame. And we've seen that like weirdly a lot. And so that's inaccurate. And so just making sure that we know like, okay, we need to leave some time to maybe to like really educate people on like the purposes of why you need a custom object. And we have podcasts on that. So go and find that. We have so many videos on that. This whole concept is like our Roman Empire, so yeah, you can find as much content on that everywhere. We're always talking about it and thinking about it.
So if this concept is our Roman Empire, I just want to know, what are the barbarians? Because that's what we need to be careful of.
Need to
bad
build
data is the barbarians.
That's true. That is very true. So last thing before we go on to the final topic here, there's still a lot of confusion in the market about the difference between funnel metrics and multi-touch attribution.
Yeah.
The custom object is this custom object in particular is not a multi-touch attribution model. It has elements of attribution, and it can get maybe more than one touch, often with tying back to the tipping point source. So you've listened to other videos of ours. It's basically, what did the buyer do that then led to sales needing to reach out, right? Like demo requests from a Google ad or an event, something like that. And maybe we can add, okay, well, what was the touch point right before an opportunity was created? What was the touch point right before the opportunity is closed? It might have a few touch points on it, but it's still not a true multi-touch attribution model like a Visible or a hockey stack or something like that.
It's more like the Signal. I think we've talked about it like that before too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then there are differences between the two. And I think we've got other content on this, right? There's one of our videos called Stop Confusing Multi-Touch Attribution and Funnel Metrics. Go check that out if you're interested. But I just want to make it really clear, like, this custom object is not to solve your multi-touch attribution issues. It's to solve something that I consider more fundamental and important, which is to solve the reporting over how you're converting the signals and buyers into revenue, tying back to more of a simple attribution model that everyone can understand, and then looking at the conversion rates throughout your sales process so you can really optimize a lot more than just marketing. You're optimizing all of your go-to-market motions. So just want to make that clear. They're not the same. They're different. They're both complementary. And I think we probably, CS2, we could probably put more content out about that because there's still a lot of confusion.
Yeah.
All right. So last topic. Chrissy, you want to tee this one up for us?
Sure. I'll kind of keep mine a bit shorter and sweeter, although it's maybe spicier. I don't know. So
Or
I think
saltier?
this is,
I don't know.
yeah, saltier. So I think this topic came up because we see it a lot, and I feel like we talk a lot about how to be more strategic in the operations role. And I think a big part of that is, creating your roadmap, making sure that your projects are aligned to the goals of the business and so forth. But I think what continues to happen too is that, especially when our key stakeholders have a certain status, like they're a CMO or a CRO or a leader at that company, or if that person just tends to be just like the loudest person in the room, honestly, they'll usually come to an ops team and be like, I want this. I need this. And some teams will just be like, okay, they'll take that and they'll figure out, okay, we need to start building for it. And I think a big issue with that is you're taking someone who is like non-operational and getting them to create a hypothesis based on the pain points that they're having or what they're seeing of like what they need and when they need it. Now that's an issue. Like that would be like me if I'm doing a work on my house, I go to a contractor and be like, I want, this, you're going to do it this way. I know nothing about building a house. And then I need you to do it in 2 weeks. And, so I think the thing is, like, a good time is to step back, because a lot of the times actually especially when I was, a lot of our client leads would probably see this, and probably sees this a lot too. It's all a lot when I was working directly with clients and when we talk to CMOs, is that they just like think that they need something. But really, actually, the thing that they're most confident is just the pain point that they're feeling. And what you need to do is really dig into that and get more information. So why are you requesting this? What is happening? What are you hearing on the, from other folks? Let's actually go in and do the research to figure out if actually this is the problem. And then also they can get a realistic idea of what needs to be done or what should be done, and then can tell them in what time frame. Otherwise, what ends up happening is you'll start a project, and then you figure out, oh, this is going to take me loads of time to do. I actually can't do this. I'm going to run into this issue. CMO goes, where the F is this stuff that I asked for? And then the team is stressed out and they're not achieving those goals. And then it just leads to chaos and people being unhappy. And frankly, sometimes this also means people leaving the company because they feel like they're just constantly not achieving what they need to do. We see it time and time again. So I think the thing here is to really be consultative, whether you're a consultant or not, whether that's in the name, like work with your key stakeholders, ask them questions, figure out what they're actually trying to get to and the goal, and then work backward from there and educate them. Like, oh, actually, I'm hearing this. So actually what I think would be useful is to do X, Y, Z. And this is the timeline or different things that we can do. And then talk through that. Like maybe you do make concessions to get them what they need faster, but at least you're owning that narrative, you're owning your roadmap, you're owning your time, and you're getting everyone to focus on the right things to do and realistically how you can do them. So just a reminder out there, like you don't need to be an order taker. If anything, the organization would really value and benefit from you being more consultative and giving advice of what should be done.
So first off, thank you for the anxiety. I definitely got triggered on that because it's so true. And it creates a lot of stress for everyone involved. my heart rate definitely increased. I mean, there's a situation that happened quite recently where CMO of one of our clients came in and said we need the custom object. Chrissy and Xander, you're familiar with this one, and we started kind of going down that path, but then we had another call with them and really started digging in because they weren't happy that it was going to take a couple of months, and asked them, got down to the bottom of it, and really what they needed was their current reporting that they had, which isn't terrible, just needed maybe a potential smaller enhancement just to be able to see channel and campaign information. So now what we're trying to do is, okay, can we just get you that level of reporting with your current setup as an interim step because you needed this like yesterday, and that can buy us some time to then build out the longer term solution, which we still agree is the right solution, but it's just not going to be turned around in days. It's a really good example of just digging a little bit deeper behind the curtain and trying to figure out what are the pressures that the C-suite are facing, as opposed to just being like, oh, they told me we want this, let's just go and do it. And if we had carried down that path, the exact situation Chris, you said would have happened. We would have started, they would have got frustrated because it takes a while to get all of that done, and it just would have created a situation that would have been a lot more tricky. So my question, Chrissy, is, you mentioned some ideas on how they can maybe in the moment kind of get ahead of this and be more consultative. What is your advice though, just in more broadly, of like how can you before someone's even like a C-suite have kind of been telling you like this is the order I want you to fulfill, how can you develop a relationship with the C-suite as a go-to-market ops person so they actually come to you for advice, they consult you even before they've tried to solution themselves? Like, what are some of the things that you can do just to set up an environment that's going to make you and the company more successful?
Well, I think one, like being comfortable putting yourself out there and developing the relationships early. I think that was one benefit that I had. I'm a bit introverted, but still when I was in-house, I constantly figured out, okay, who are my key stakeholders? How can I get in front of them early? And how can I start meeting with them more regularly so that I can really dig into the pains that they're having? So for me, that was usually whoever was heading up marketing, SDRs, or sales, depending on it. But a lot of the time is actually who heads up SDRs at that time. But I would suggest it being a salesperson too, or CRO. And then also like if you have a sales ops like counterpart who is at like a leadership level or whatnot. But I think developing that relationship and just really understanding from them their key like pain points to start, even if you don't execute anything, you're just talking about that, I think is a good place to start in developing that relationship. It's hard. A lot of ops people, like we don't like putting ourselves out there. If anything, you like executing. And I would say like really push yourself if you don't want to, but if you want to head down and be a true leader, I think definitely do that. And then figure out how often you do that with your stakeholders, and also coming to your stakeholders with ideas on what should be done. So you are so close to data, you're close to what's happening across the org, and not only listening, but also coming to the table with ideas. I suggest this for people in their jobs anyway. Like a leader always loves when people come to them with ideas.
Yeah.
And how to improve things, and can be a little bit entrepreneurial in their role. And so that's another key piece of advice, is you're in a great opportunity to do that. And then they might be like, that's a great idea, go do it. And so you're like, okay, well, and they'll probably figure out the resources for you to do it. And then circling back on that and showing how it was successful for the company and how it's been providing value in those chats too. So relationship building is really key, but also coming to the ideas with table is coming to the table with ideas is another key part of that.
All right, well, perfect. So any final comments here from Xander or you, Chrissy, before we wrap up?
If I can, I have two like really just tactical tips on what we were just talking about. And it's kind of extrapolating a little bit of that. So when you're asking those questions, one thing that I would recommend is avoid using why. Why do you want this? Why are you asking this question? Why are you feeling this pain? Always go with what and who and how, and they're softer, and it's more likely that you're going to get better answers. You know, what is the reason for the request, or what is the reason for the urgency? It's just it gives it a little bit more disconnecting it from the person. So that's always helped me.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And then also, like, thinking about those long-term projects or those bigger projects that we're working on, identify what those quick wins are. You know, almost every big project that you take on, you can kind of find, like, are there some, we call them low-hanging fruit, jargon, but like, what are the low-hanging fruit that we can identify and can maybe get some quick wins, show some success, relieve some of that initial pain. I know that you talked about it in that specific one, but I feel like it's really relevant to any large initiative that you're working on.
Yeah.
100% agree with both of those. Yeah, if you can, but to Chrissy's point around developing the relationship, developing trust, a lot of that is kind of the networking side, the people side, all of that. But it's also, once you have got some of the quick wins, once you've got a few kind of like positive success stories under your belt, you know, the C-suite or the leadership, they're going to be like, oh, person X, like this person knows what they're doing. Like, if a problem comes up, I'll go speak to this. Like, you want to be that person, kind of their phone a friend, like who wants to be a millionaire kind of person whenever they've got a problem. And that comes from developing the relationship, being super proactive, showing them the wins. And one of the things that Chrissy's always taught me is like, market yourself. Like, you've done something, tell people about it. Whether that's like an internal newsletter or just kind of like if putting your hand up if you've got some kind of internal calls where people try and share success stories, or get a spot on the sales QBR of like the marketing ops or the rev ops updates. Do all of these things because you want to really position yourself as the person that's going to solution and solve the problems, not as someone who they can just send orders to and you're just going to read like the Asana request and just do what you're told. And that's a massive unlock in your career, and it can just really help you get a lot more fulfillment out of your job. So I think that's a perfect way to wrap this up. So thanks, team, and thanks everyone for listening. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, subscribe. We're putting a lot of effort into YouTube these days. So if you're listening to this on a podcast player, like head over to YouTube. We have been releasing some of our YouTube videos as podcasts as well. So let us know if you've been enjoying those. But there are still a lot of videos that are just sitting on YouTube that have not been released as a podcast. So plenty of content for you to dig into, lots of really practical advice, lots of good stuff that I hope everyone will learn from. So check it out. Let us know if you're liking it. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Revenue Growth Architects. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.